All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. To my regular listeners, it's the expectation. You know what we're about. You know what we do here. We bring you nothing but the best. People that come on here, share their story, share their inspiring story, and they give you just a little bit of gems, just something that you could be doing to make it so yourself is getting a little better. You're doing something in which you can be getting better. Today I have my guy K Chan on, who is given the new meaning to the word creativity, a new meaning to the word to how you give presentations, how you capture an audience. Everything is so visual nowadays, and he's been able to kind of corner a niche part of the market where he's been able to really create cool things. So all that being said, K Chan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Aswan. I mean, really excited to be here. I'll tell you what, I'm pretty nervous about this because I don't do this often.
Oh, I definitely appreciate you coming on, knowing that you don't do it often, and it is actually considered an honor because I was reading a little bit about your bio before we started recording, and you came up in a fairly rough situation, right? You came up in a fairly rough situation, and you didn't go the normal route, like go to college and all that, but you had a gift, a creative juice in you that you really explored. So the best way to start it off, I think, is to just kind of go in a little bit about your background, your childhood, kind of the way you grew up in. What are the creative things that you were doing young, like the young you, that made it so you're able to build over a pretty profitable business from it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it has so much of a tie-in with what it is I do currently. However, my inspiration was never faltered from the start.
Hmm.
I want to say that, from the very beginning, we grew up, my family, in severe hardship. I mean, we escaped a war
Yeah.
back in the late 70s, early 80s,
Mm.
um, became refugees in Thailand, then became refugees in America, lived in Lowell for nearly half my life,
Gosh.
for a long time, actually, and, lived poorly. So,
Now, you
um,
were these going on during your teenage years? Or
I was born, um, so I was born in Cambodia and I was only an infant when my parents carried me over through, escaping
okay,
the war.
all right,
So I grew up a little bit in Thailand and then the majority of my childhood was spent in Lowell, Massachusetts.
okay,
Um, and during that time, we lived in very crowded areas. We
right,
didn't have a penny to our names.
right.
And I think like my only salvation at the time was either was a pen and paper or a
Yes.
pencil and paper rather.
Yeah.
Um, you know, mainly kept to myself.
Yeah.
I was an honor student. My parents, they were hard on me when it came to education.
Yes.
So
That's
the
important.
decision later on to not even go to college, that was heartbreaking for them.
Yes, and
Um,
I have to pause you there because I want to make sure I don't brush over this point because there's
sure.
a lot of parents that have resources, a lot of parents that have a lot of money. There's a lot of people that come from money and have a background, generational wealth, all that. When in all actuality, for you as a parent, because I teach now and I deal with a lot of parents, for you as a parent, what you need is resilience and you need the ability to make sure you're giving your kids the tools to survive. It has nothing to do with money. Yes, you need to do what you have to do to pay bills and all that. But even if you don't have the money per se, there are ways in which you can have a mindset that's going to help the next generation. I hear so many people complain so much time about, oh, I don't have the money to do this. I don't have the money to do that. You don't, yes, you're going to need, but you don't need it to teach your kids how to survive in this world. So, shout out to the parents, man. If, they definitely have done a great job. And kudos to them as an educator, kudos to them for raising that and making sure that that was something you had.
Absolutely. I mean, if anything that they taught me that was, invaluable is, you know, to have that type of honor, to to be respectful of elders and, to be respectful of anyone, really. There's no such thing as, a bad person until they've proven to you that they're bad.
Yeah.
So my logical step into interacting with people was always in a positive way. And that was something that my parents had instilled on me.
Hmm.
And at the same time, they were very, very strict on education. I didn't have a lot of time, I didn't have the gift of having fun playing sports and, going out in most days.
Right.
My parents kept me home
Yeah.
doing homework, and after I'm done with homework, doing more work.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things that they instilled into me, and it was just, it in a sense it felt almost like brainwashing, um, where like work became life for me at that point. But then I did, like I said, I did find salvation in art. So I did a lot of illustration, um, did a lot of poetry, and eventually, finally, when my parents started to ease up a little bit, I was allowed to play college sports. I mean, not college sports, sorry, high school sports, and that was a gift in itself. But prior to that, no, I had no freedom whatsoever.
What'd you end up playing?
Um, Football, basketball, volleyball.
Hmm.
Who would have thought I was actually pretty athletic back then?
Yeah.
But then, afterwards, it was just afterwards. I tore my shoulder,
Hmm.
hurt my back, and then ended up having knee surgery, and I couldn't do any of those things anymore.
Yeah.
And now
I've
I
had
just
an
golf.
ACL surgery, so I can resonate with that as well.
Yeah,
The
yeah. The only thing I can do now is golf, really, and
yeah,
badly.
that golfing is good for business, my man. So what you graduated high school, and like you said, you chose not to go to college, but you go right into, because I know it mentioned in your bio that you were working certain jobs, like certain office project jobs that weren't fulfilling and things like that. Was that directly after high school, and how did you get into that?
It was the very first job I ever had directly out of high school that pertained to my field, was a jewelry design business.
Hmm.
Um, so I was working for a company that was local who hired me as a graphic designer. Um, and I'll tell you what, it wasn't very fulfilling at all. Everything that I learned I was self-taught. It was kind of a struggle, to be honest with you. I was pretty much accepting any job at the moment. But surprisingly, I was there for quite a long time until I started to realize, hey, you know what? I've developed so much with my skills. I've developed a portfolio and all that. And then I started putting my name out there. The hardest thing that ever came about for me was my inability to speak to people, say like during interviews or public speaking or just meeting people in general, just because the way I was brought up, I was so secluded.
Hmm.
Um, I think, I mean, the one thing that actually really changed my life was because I jumped, I went into a relationship with a girl, and, we broke up, and I was brokenhearted. And then you know, it was this whole thing that I'm not going to try to get into.
Hmm.
The thing is that, I was knocking on my friend's door, looking for any sort of relief or comfort, or another a listening ear. I'm not sure if a lot of your listeners you know can relate to that, but it was a
Quite a
struggle. It was
few.
an
There'd be
emotional
quite a
struggle.
few. We actually had a previous guest on who was in a similar situation, and the story with him is the breakup happened out of nowhere. It was like they were happy, and then one week she just calls him, he was injured, and next thing you know, they're broken up. So, you know, that happens. And one of the things that get this consistent, and you regular listeners know, one of the things that is consistent with everyone that has been able to build their brand or become a success is there was that period of doubt. There was that period where there was an outside force, an external person, something that made it so they had to doubt themselves and they had to overcome it. So the
Right.
point of me making sure I'm re-emphasizing that is understanding hard times are inevitable. People will let you down, but it's part of the process. When these things happen, you've got to knuckle up and just say, okay, part of the process. I said I wanted to be a success because, like you just said, during your time at it was at a jewelry store, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
were picking up skills that are now that I'm sure you kind of draw back on now whenever you get a new client or whenever something comes up, you're able to draw back on those skills. So, speak a little bit about, when you finally made this decision to leave this place and get into I believe that it start off all this freelance work while you were working a job. How were you able to kind of put
No.
everything together? And because I looked at it, there was some pretty cool presentations.
Thanks. No, my portfolio was built over several years. I mean, I've been a graphic designer for over, I want to say over 25 years now.
Hmm.
Um, and at the very start, it was a jewelry company, but then I started putting my name out there, and I started acquiring other odd jobs that weren't, so much better than that. But at the same time, I had the ability to, you know, my sole focus wasn't even about the money. It
Hmm.
was more about trying to acclimate to, the changing world. Everything was going digital. My forte at the time, we're talking about, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. During that time, we weren't drastically going digital so much, but I wanted to be ahead of the game. So that's when I took my skills into, graphic design and got everything digital. And from there, it was jumping from that particular company and going into other, more recognized companies.
Hmm.
And then after building such a huge portfolio, then instead of being able to, interview well, I allowed for my portfolio to speak for myself. So
Hmm.
all my hard work actually opened up a lot of doors for me. Having a history of artwork, having a history of things that I've done, all that portfolio, I was able to finally find jobs that was a little bit more befitting my role, I would say. So I started working at CVS, which is a huge company. You've heard of them. I
Right.
was designing for them,
Mhm.
and
In
then
the corp, you're designing stuff for the corporate, in the corporate or
yes,
store level. Oh,
yeah.
corporate.
So I was at the corporate level. Having done with that, I started designing for agencies. I was art director there,
Hmm.
and then finally moved on to Hasbro, which I was there for a good amount of time. That is a very recognized company and very creative people that I worked with. The thing about that was that I was just awestruck and inspired every single day that I went to work there, and that
Hmm.
was awesome. Being in a facility where where our main focus was just teamwork,
Hmm.
and then our main focus was for you to do your job and for your teammates to do your job and for everything to mesh so well that all of a sudden you have beautiful products like, I mean, if anybody's watching the podcast, you can see some of the stuff in my background. A lot of these things are the things that I personally made myself while working for the corporate company. um, and it wasn't like prior to that, and by the way, being able to work at places like Hasbro, it wasn't just the portfolio that got me there. Remember I told you how I went through a bad breakup?
Yeah.
Well, the thing that really changed my life was
Right.
that my friend who got sick of hearing me,
Right.
you know,
Complain about her.
cry about this girl. Yeah.
Right.
He was like, hey, I need you to read this book, So he hands me a book. I was like, what is this? This looks so stupid. It looks like, all right. So at face value, I'm just looking at it and it's like, it looks like a Bible, you know. But in a way, he, coyly just said, yeah, in a way, it kind of is a Bible. So
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the book that he actually handed to me is called The Game by Neil Strauss. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah, I no, I haven't read that one. The author I'm familiar with,
Okay.
but the book I haven't read. Neil Strauss I've heard of. Neil Strauss, I mean.
Yeah. So that book is really just his first person encounter with an underground society of pickup artists.
Hmm.
So really, at face value, that's what the intention was for my friend to hand me that book. That was his intention, for me to just get over this girl,
Yeah.
read this book, maybe I'll learn something. Um, what unfolded wasn't, what he had planned. What instead unfolded was, hey, all of a sudden I'm able to see myself from a third person's perspective, being able to self-evaluate myself,
Hmm.
um, being able to finally get out of my, cargo shorts and, big t-shirts or like baggy pants and things of that nature.
Hmm.
Um, Finally understanding that, hey, you know what, self-improvement isn't just me being comfortable with myself, but
Hmm.
also being comfortable with myself in the way people see me too.
Yeah.
So that book changed a lot about me. My ability to even speak to you right now is actually originated from that book.
Yes.
I would never have done this, say
Hmm.
like 10 years ago. I never would have done this. Um, but the book itself, not it doesn't tell me how to speak to people necessarily,
Hmm.
but it gave me the courage to say, all right, click the button to accept this invitation,
Yeah.
or jump into this conversation with this crowd of people at a bar.
Yeah.
Just do it. And like no one is gonna judge you afterward. And even if they do, who cares? You
Yeah.
know, that inspired me to be able to just jump into any conversation,
Hmm.
maybe be confident about what it is that I say. And I believe that was the reason why I was even able to work for companies like these. Um,
Right.
but it wasn't until COVID when, you know, things kind of just hit the fan, and I ended up being laid off after being there for so long. It wasn't until then that I realized, hey, you know what? My skills, I don't think I need to be working for the man anymore. You know, I think I have enough in my portfolio. I
Right.
think I have enough to speak to what it is that I do. Um, and I think I have enough leadership and management skills for me to be able to consult other businesses
Right.
for how they want to proceed with their communication.
Right.
From that point on, I just decided, hey, you know what? I'll just go into freelancing, start my own business. It was by far the best decision that I've ever made financially. Um, and I actually have a lot more time now too. Being able to golf every now and then is really nice.
Exactly. Yeah, I saw that. And there's a couple points I want to make sure I make to you listeners, especially if you're a listener and you're also an author. Understand the power of intellectual property, guys. Understand the power of having a book out. Understand that even though if you just absolutely never know who it's going to help, who it's going to save, who it's going to touch, and how you're going to change a person's life. I'm sure the author's name is Neil Stratus, correct?
Neil Strauss.
So he, puts a book out just like a lot of the authors that are listening now, and you just never know where it's going to go. It falls into your hands because somebody else recommended it, and ultimately that led to a significant change in his confidence, a significant change in his demeanor. And this is something that you have to be thinking about as an author, as you're struggling, maybe struggling to write a book. You may be struggling to get the book sold and all that. You just got to keep going, keep going, keep going, because you don't know who it's going to touch. Next point I want to make is, there was a sense, and I don't want to brush it over, that yeah, I believe you said like 1999, where you saw the need for a graphic designer. You saw that there was going to be something out there where there's going to be needs for people that are in your field. What do you think attributed to you having that insight to know that what you do now was going to be needed back before the internet was a thing and before, there was all these social media and everyone's hiring a freelancer now? What do you attribute to that, to having that insight?
I think the thing that sparked me
Mhm.
was my older brother, who was a huge techie back then.
Okay.
You know, he was such an inspiration to how I think.
Uh,
Um, at one point or another, he was talking about like the development of internet, and he was all over it.
mm,
I want to say that he was dabbling in the stock market for a little bit, and then these are the informations that he carried over to me, and he was just
right.
having a conversation with me. He was like, "Hey, think of as many dot com names as you can think of, and then
Ah,
run it
nice.
by me." And his idea was to just purchase as many as he could,
All right.
and you know and I mean he made a killing doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know specifically what websites or what URLs he was selling, but
Yeah.
I know that he jumped on board as quickly as he could, trying to buy up all the names before the internet boom was, the
Yeah,
internet boom.
imagine being that person though, man. You buy
Yeah.
all the domain
I
names that get sold nowadays. Imagine being the first wave of people to see that.
It's insane. I remember one he said, "Oh man, I was like just a fraction late to get it, but it was dictionary.com."
Oh, yeah, that would have been bad. I write articles
Yeah.
every week, so I'm on that website all the time, making sure I
Yeah, exactly.
get clear
So
with my
he
definitions.
so that was the inspiration for me, and he talked about like, what my strengths were too. I was in illustration. I was
Mhm.
pencil. I was paper. I was charcoal. Paint. Um, and he was like, "Do you expect to make a lot of money with that
Mhm.
eventually?" I was like, "No, absolutely not. I just love doing it." He's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, what if there was a way for you to just jump within that same spectrum, but make it digital instead?" I
Mhm.
was like, sounds fun, So then that's when I started dabbling into like, Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign and all the Adobe stuff. I just jumped right in.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until my brother and I had that conversation was when I realized, hey, you know what? There might actually be money in this.
Mhm.
The only problem was that I wasn't the only one that was thinking that. I
Right.
mean, RISD students were already being taught these things
Yeah.
while I was being self-taught.
Right.
So, living in Rhode Island too, those were my competitors.
Mhm.
Really, all these kids coming out of college in
Yeah.
like RISD, they were all my competitors, and they're all very talented. Most of them were very talented.
Right.
I would say the majority of the people that worked at Hasbro
Mhm.
were all former RISD students or RISD alumni.
Right.
Um, for me to say that I was competing with them or for me to be in the same category as them, I was very
Yeah.
proud of that.
Yeah, it's a big
Right?
because the resources they had, like I was telling you before, the resources they had were again, you have this college campus, you didn't have to really learn it. You go to school, you may learn it, things like that. You didn't have those resources. You're coming at it from a straight talent, passion perspective, and you're able to turn that into something where you're again on that level playing field.
I think that's important too, is to understand that, some kids go at it, some kids do what they do because they think they have to do it. Um, I felt that that wasn't going to be me,
Yes.
right? I knew what I loved. I knew my passion for it. I knew that I was probably going to die doing
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
because maybe I'm not as good as I say I am, or maybe I'm not as good as I think I am,
Right.
but I'm damn well going to try it just because, nothing's really going to stop me. Um,
Exactly.
and when I broke that news to my parents, I mean they weren't happy about it. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna be poor for the rest of your life."
Hmm.
Now it's a different story. Now they're looking at me as like, "Hey, you know what? They won't say it, but they're really proud of me."
Yeah. Now,
It's
how were
so
you able
stern.
to how are you able to process that though? Because I too have parents that aren't from the US. My family's from Trinidad and Tobago, and they weren't used to sports and stuff like that, or American culture, and they're only looking at what's on TV to make you money. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, they again went through a period like your parents where they're very skeptical about the results or the outcomes of what it is you want to be doing. And that can be very discouraging for the kid. Well, how were you able to work through those things?
Um, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard. I mean, both my parents, they really, really wanted me to go to college.
Hmm.
And they really, really wanted me to be able to get all the skills that was not art, so that I could better my life.
Right.
Like go to school, be a lawyer, go to school, be a
Yep.
doctor, go to school,
Exactly.
be,
Right.
something meaningful.
Right.
And I tell them it's like because they don't know the importance of art in the world, they don't know the
Hmm.
importance of design in the world. It was very, very difficult for me to talk them out of their mindset.
Hmm.
So eventually, what ended up happening was I just moved out of the house. That was as simple as I could make it. Was that I moved out of the house because I was with them for so long. What was it? I moved out when I almost immediately. I think I turned 20, and then I just immediately moved out of the house.
Yeah.
Um, Started living on my own. And I didn't have a lot to my name. I was working those odd jobs at the time, but
Right. Right. Right.
adamant. I was adamant about building my skill set, about building my portfolio.
Hmm.
And eventually, sometime later, and this is after, I've had my success doing what it is that I do now and while I was at Hasbro,
Right.
um, I finally showed them what I was doing in my portfolio.
Hmm.
And I was showing them all these big name brands that were hiring me to do the stuff that I'm doing.
Hmm.
And finally it clicked with them. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Wait, you know, BMW hired you?
Yeah.
Microsoft hired you?
So then they
What?
understood.
What?
Right.
And and their mind was kind of blown in a way because they were like, oh, because to them, success only meant, oh yeah, you opened up a business like a restaurant or,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
a shop of some sort, or you're a doctor or you're a lawyer
Right,
or,
right,
you know, those things. But then eventually, when I finally showed them my portfolio of all these designs that I've done for all these big name companies, then they started to realize, they were like, oh, okay, now that you put it that way, sure. They would never come out and say, hey, we're proud of
right.
you. You know,
No, no, no,
it's
no, no.
the
That's
way
that.
they
No,
work.
yeah. Well, the thing is, what I've learned is sometimes they say it in their tone. They might not use
Yeah.
the words, but it's like not gonna come out my mouth. But there's that of you. I was like, all right, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
For me, it was more like a smack in the back of the head and was like, yeah, you did all
Right,
right.
right. And those are rewarding, man, because as kids,
Yeah,
and ultimately what it has taught me, because I'm kind of in that place now where I'm around kids and I'm teaching them. I've learned there's some qualities I'm taking from them and they look at me the same way. And it's like, it's just part of the game, and as long as, if you're a parent listening in, as long as the kid knows you love them, then that's really all you can do. But you can't really control their decisions because ultimately it's going to be their decisions. The only thing that you can do is show them that you love them and that you will be there for them regardless of whatever it is they do. That's the important thing for them to know. So, with all that being said, I do want to make sure I give you the opportunity to talk a little. So you're 2020, you get laid off, and how did you go from that to getting your first client to say, man, this work is great? Because like you mentioned, you didn't have the sort of the gift of gab yet. And I guess you have to develop that to go and present your stuff to the right person, to get the right check
right.
written and all that. Walk us through like that first deal where you're like, all right, I got it.
So how I first got started was I connected with a presentation designer coach.
Mhm.
So she's been doing it for quite a while, and it was a very particular niche for her, and she tapped into it very very early. Whereas while she was doing that, I was doing, general graphic design. So it was within my wheelhouse to be able to do presentation design. It's just that everybody in my field, graphic designers, general graphic designers, they hate presentation design. So they hate PowerPoint, they hate Keynote, they hate, Google Slides, all of that. They adamantly hate them. And I understand as well too, because when I was doing general graphic design, I never thought twice about presentation design ever,
Mm,
because I disliked it as well. They
mhm.
weren't, they're not necessarily, a design program.
Right,
However, I come from a situation where I have this background of using all these other materials, all these other applications that I can use to complement um, a PowerPoint or Keynote or all that stuff. And
right,
being able to have that type of history, being able to have that type of, you know, um, being able to use those type of programs
right.
put me in a very, very, um, you know, good spot to be able to, take advantage of this niche.
Yeah.
So I contacted her, and for about say like 3 or 4 months, we just had our power about how we would be able to attack, um, you know, this particular field.
Mhm.
Um, she gave me all the proper advices. She told me how to start my company. She told me what it is to expect with presentation designs and all that stuff. It's not that I've never done it before in the past, but having someone to coach you, having someone to manage you, having someone to tell you, hey, you know what? The most important thing maybe isn't your design. The most important thing might be your SEO. Someone to tell you something like
Yep.
that was huge. It was a huge step towards building better relationships for myself and the clients that I end up working with. So
Mhm.
from there, it was just you know building my SEO. Part of this right now, what we're doing right now, is a process to build my SEO as well.
Mhm.
So I would continue to keep doing podcasts as a guest just to help build my SEO. Um,
So walk people through, because there may be some non-technical people. I know what it means, but can you walk people through exactly what you mean by SEO?
SEO is search engine optimization. So
Mhm.
whenever you have a website, There are keywords that, you know, will trigger Google to say, hey, this is a web page that you're looking for when you type it in.
Right.
So when you're looking for, say, like a, you know, freelance presentation designer and you type it in, my name's probably not going to show up unless my SEO is built up properly.
Right.
And then in order for that to build up properly,
Hmm.
I would need a lot of backlinks, or I would need to have a lot of blogs or all this stuff that, you know, correlates to the discussion of what my keyword, you know, states.
Exactly.
Um, and and in order for to have those type of backlinks, it's me having to do a lot of legwork
Hmm.
or having a lot of other people post links to my site. So
Hmm.
doing what we're doing right now actually helps it tremendously. So that's kind of an inside, you know, that's kind of an inside trade knowledge right there, and that's free.
Right. Yeah, it's free.
Um,
Yeah, we getting coaching today, boy. We getting coaching today. Yeah, SEO is very important for your thought leaders out there. I have been in the process of learning that myself and making sure, you know, everything I post has certain hashtags to it, the whole nine. So it is something that you do need to consider given the digital world that we live in now.
right. It's not just having a website anymore. You know,
Nope.
nobody sees your website anymore. You need to be able to be, you know, accessible.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's like having a cheat code for Where's Waldo.
Exactly.
That's essentially what an SEO is.
Right.
Um, you know, Waldo's there, you know it's there,
Right.
but it's a lot easier to find when you have the proper tools.
We have the
So
two.
this
Right.
is also part of the very larger process of building an SEO. So she was teaching me that. She was teaching me how to, you know, how to, you know, speak with clients, how
Hmm.
to, you know, communicate, how to even draft up my prices for them too. You know, all that coaching, you know, it goes a long way because I knew nothing about that. I was a creative person doing the thing that I knew how to do. The
Right.
part that I didn't know how to do was manage that as a, I want to say, like as a small business.
Yeah,
You know,
there's the
that was the
artist
part that
and
I was
then there's
not
the
ready to go.
entrepreneur mindset. The entrepreneur is making the revenue, the artist mindset is just doing the work and creating it. So that's
Right.
an important distinction as well.
It's so huge.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you what, I barely, I have not cracked the code yet.
Hmm.
I barely know anything about managing my own business. I just know that it's a business worth having, and
Yeah,
it's something that I need to keep, you know, stoking that fire.
right. So what would you say is like the next phase to what it is you do? You know, where do you see it going? Like what's the goal? Where do you see it 5, 10 years down the line and things like that?
Well, 5 to 10 years down the line, so I make anywhere between, I want to say, 150 to $300,000 a year, doing whatever it is that I do, and it's basically a slow solo job. Eventually, I want to build my brand into something a lot bigger, and I want to give myself maybe a 5 year plan where I haven't drafted it out yet, but it's all in there.
Right.
It's all in here,
Yes. Where it's
where
supposed to start, by the way,
we're
listener.
supposed to
It
start, right?
needs to be in your head first.
I mean, I need to be inspired.
Mhm.
And the inspiration is there. What I really need to do is lay out the game plan. And I think it's something that would work. My biggest thing about it is that I know it needs to take time, so I want to give it time.
Mhm.
A lot of people will think, "Hey, I did this much this year. I can probably double it next year." That's really not the mindset.
Huh.
My mindset is that, you know, maybe a year from now, I'm going to lose a lot of money.
Hmm.
I'm not going to make as much. But my 5 year plan is that I'm going to take a dip because I'm trying something new. And then eventually, when that works, this is when I start doubling up.
Wow.
So my goal right now is to expand my business in a way where I am not the sole designer anymore.
Mhm.
You know, I want I want to build at least a business development team because that's the hugest factor. Um, building a you know building that type of business needs new clients, and then more importantly, maintaining clients that I already have as well.
Right.
That's the easy part. but acquiring new clients is all about having business development. So expand into business development, and then later on build onto more graphic designers. And I end up being, I don't want to say it's a studio because it's not going to be a studio.
Mhm.
It's not going to be, it's not going to be an agency. What I intend to do is be the main focus of design.
Right.
I will be the leader in design, and everything else that I do where there's overflow, I will try to outsource that as much as I can,
Right.
and then essentially selling projects as a business.
Yeah, because I'd
That's
assume.
kind of my way to go.
Yeah, because well, the thing is, I'd assume with that, what you're doing, if you're the only person doing it, I assume it's very time consuming stuff. Like I just put together a post, a iMovie post, and it's taken me like 20 minutes. I'm thinking that's time consuming. So imagine being responsible for these huge budgets and making sure that the social media. Now, do you do the campaigns for them as well, or do they actually design campaigns, like ad campaigns and all that? I'd imagine that's going to take me longer than a day or a week or so.
It does. It does. A lot of them, I mean, I work fairly quickly, so that's kind of a boom there. I work fairly quickly, but if I am over, if I'm at, max bandwidth, I
Right.
always have people that I can reach out to. Designers know a lot of designers out there.
Okay.
Um, and sometimes I will outsource my work at a loss just because I need to get it
Got to
done
get done.
and I
Right.
needed
Right.
to get it done right.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I can reassure, like, you know, any potential clients that may reach out to me is that I will always have the last say in what goes out. And
Got
that
it.
is the most important part because what we're talking about right now is white labeling, having other people work for me, being paid by me to do my projects.
Hmm.
The thing is that the project is coming from somewhere else.
Right.
So essentially, my business is about me being the art director to all these other agencies.
Right.
And then, having me have the last say, at least, you know, has that type of integrity that
Right.
says, hey, this is still my brand. This is still, the quality that I anticipate, doing or having for these clients.
Right. So, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you? How can they reach out if they're interested in working with you?
Best way to reach out to me is my website, chimeric.com, KHIMERIC.com.
Hmm.
Easily reach to me there. They could check out my portfolio, they could check out my website, see if I'm the right designer for them. And
Great.
then, really it's just an email away.
I got you. So all that will be included in the show notes as well. And Kay, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to just use your imagination a little bit. You are young, maybe we'll say elementary school, you're struggling, your parents are on you about your grades, that I want you to pretend that little boy has come into the Zoom room, give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Well, number one, I'd say, what do you like doing? Or
Hmm.
what's your passion? And, whatever that answer is, you want to stoke that fire. You just want to say, hey, you know what, you got to keep at it. You got to, if people doubt you, you really have to make sure that you make them believe one way or another.
Amen to that, man. Amen to that. I officially, there's very few times on this show where I actually have nothing to say, and I'm officially dropping the mic with that. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.